Hello, everyone. Jack Bigedu here, the Hood Sommelier. Um, we are here. It's Wednesday. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. As you can see from my hat, this is our guest today. Um, if you're a brand and you never came on the Truth is Barrel Proof, or you're really cool, this is the Cool Kids House. And thank y'all so much for always being here, for always supporting, for always commenting. If you're here, you're on YouTube, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, or formerly known as X. Thank you so much for being here. The goal of the Truth is Barrel Proof is to build a hood of all the people that love whiskey. So if you love whiskey, this is your house. And all the brands that come here, the goal is for you to tell your story. Today, we have somebody very special. Brian has a long history in bourbon, but if you go stalk him online, there's a chances that you will not even know that unless you go on LinkedIn or somewhere. I had to do some deep dive because his LinkedIn is all about, his social is about family, having a good time, just being a regular guy. And I kind of like that till you dig a little deeper. You're like, oh, he been in it around whiskey for a long, long time. So I'm very excited to learn about the story of this brand. This brand came about, I would say, about a year and a half that I heard about it. There's a lot of history behind. There's a lot of stories I've heard, but I want to hear it from the man himself. So I brought him here to the Cool Kids house so he can tell me a little more about this Never Say Die. To be honest, when I heard Never Say Die, I'm like, this is a James Bond movie. So it must be a James Bond gin or something out. But surprise, it was a bourbon. So if you're here, if you have questions, if you had never said die before, yeah, we would love to hear from you. But without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Brian Luftman. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Jack.
No, absolutely. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you being here. Let me just quickly
I'm
bring the
honored, honored to be in the hood.
oh no, no, you. This is just the cool kids house. So if you're here and you're part of the cool kids, we love you. We love you just like that. That's the
Thanks.
best way for us to put it. I always tell people we are bringing people into the cool kids house, and hopefully they can the folks can learn something, right? Something new, right? About what the world of whiskey, the so evolving world of whiskey is like. So, welcome to the show. First question I will always ask is introduce yourself to the folks. Who is Brian Luffman?
I am calling from Lexington, Kentucky, and I'm an entrepreneur. And that's how I got roped into this Never Say Die project because a friend of mine told me an incredible story. And he called me on purpose because he wanted me. He knew I was a crazy enough entrepreneur to take on a project and take it from idea stage to all the way as far as you can possibly take it. So that's me. I'm 45 years old and married with 3 kids and happy to live in bourbon country here in Lexington, Kentucky.
That's what I said about your socials because crazy thing about your socials is you are a big family man. You're, just having a good time. I think you have you have a son, right? You have a son,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that's
And
from what
two
I
two
picture.
daughters.
Two daughters. Okay, I wasn't sure. The girls were next to you, but I know your son for sure because you took a picture of him and his other comrade when they all wearing their uniforms. So I'm like, okay, that's definitely his son. But wanted to make sure people know that this is the father, right, and an entrepreneur that actually want to get in the world of whiskey, which we are seeing more of, right? We're seeing more of those entrepreneur that's trying to bring fresh new ideas to the show. So thank you for being here. People
Thanks.
on YouTube are saying hello. People are joining in. So thanks for being here. Never say die. Let's jump right into it. What the heck is this thing? Because I have a little historic that was sent to me. I read it, but this story went all sort of ways, from music to horses to somewhere in UK to some. I, I have no idea what's happening. So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Never say die.
Well, I know all your fans are probably all bourbon and whiskey fans, right? So
Right.
let's cut right to that. Like it's a whiskey. We make Kentucky bourbon and the Kentucky rye whiskey. And we're the first and only company that has ever taken barrels of Kentucky aged whiskey, shipped them across the ocean in a shipping container in the barrel, and age them in a different country, bottle it there, and then maybe bring it back here to the United States. Nobody else does that. And your crew is probably asking, why on earth
Why?
why would they do that?
Why will one do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, good thing we have a little bit of time because I can tell you the story, and then it will all sort of make sense because the whole point of doing that expensive, obnoxious project is to pay tribute to a horse that was an underdog champion and maybe changed music history, and was one of the greatest underdog stories that's ever been in horse racing. So I can tell the whole story if you like, Jack. We can unpack little bits at a time.
Give us the fun part of the story as we start with as I would say, give us half of it, then we'll jump into the bourbon, taste it,
Yeah.
and then we can continue with the story.
Yeah. Okay. So the main thing, and this is the part of the story that we really want to celebrate and why we're doing this, is that a horse here in Lexington, Kentucky, was born on my co-founder's farm. Patrick Madden is my co-founder. He's the one that called me with this story years ago, and this horse was born in 1951 on his property in eastern Lexington, and horrible birth. The horse it breaks a few ribs on the way out. It's got a very faint, if any, heartbeat at all. It's not breathing right, and they think we're going to lose this young thoroughbred. And they called the main horse guy, the farm manager, into the barn, and the horse's life is saved by a shot of whiskey. The guy dumps a shot of whiskey down the horse's throat to try to shock its system, and boom, he snaps out of it, walks around the barn, and they're like, well, we either killed it or we saved it. We'll see in the morning. And sure enough, the horse was running around and just fine the next day, despite the broken ribs, of course. And they named him Never Say Die. And we can get into the rest of the story later. But if that's not a good enough reason to start a whiskey brand called Never Say Die, if this stuff is life-saving stuff, let's go with that. But there's two other layers of the story.
Life-saving whiskey.
Let me tell you, don't put it on the label, but
Life-saving whiskey. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we start with this amazing, immaculate what a revival of a horse.
Exactly.
And is the horse named Never Say Die then?
Of course. Yeah. So he lives through the night, and they named him Never Say Die. So
Okay.
that's the incredible part one of a 3-part story. I'll tell you the rest whenever you like.
Yeah. So Never Say
And actually,
Die.
the least unbelievable, actually, of the 3 parts of the story. So there you go.
All right, let's hear part 2. So for all of you guys that are here that are seeing this, on the bottle, you guys give homage to the horse, right? 1954, I believe, right?
That's right. He was born in 51, and then as a 3-year-old, he was the famous underdog, and in the Epsom Derby, which I'll tell you that part.
You guys can see clearly, obviously, the design here. You chose a really interesting bottle design as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We did not we didn't do that. We hired the smartest people in the world to do that. So Stranger and Stranger out of England, we have this incredible story. We had no idea what we wanted the bottle to look like. We didn't know what we wanted the packaging to look like. We just knew we wanted it to be awesome and somewhat modern, somewhat historical. And we hired this group, and they're truly incredible. They came back with some really cool stuff. We had to pick one of their options, and this is the one we chose. It's
I love the cork as well. Very beautiful, very modern, very slick on a cork. Popped nicely.
All right.
So let's talk about the first edition of this whiskey you put up, as you tell us the other side of this story. First edition that you put up is 700 ml, because you went with the European standard 700 ml, and
That's
this
right.
comes at 95 proof.
Correct.
All right. So,
and it's distilled in Kentucky.
that was my next question. You're reading my mind now. Is this still in Kentucky? Okay.
Yeah,
Where in
yeah. You want to
Kentucky,
know
if you can
about
tell?
the whiskey? It's distilled in Danville, Kentucky,
Okay.
and your fans can probably figure out which distillery that is.
Yeah.
They had a transaction where they were purchased by a larger group, and so we try not to. We're not really supposed to mention where it's made, but it
Right.
is made
Right.
there. And we age it here for that whiskey you're drinking was aged in Kentucky for 6 years at least, and then we package those barrels, as I mentioned before, into a shipping container. They take a 6 week voyage, sloshing around in the barrel over the Atlantic Ocean to England. They land in the port in Liverpool. Then they're transported to White Peak Distillery, which is our partner distillery over there in England, and they're a actual single malt producer. They take our barrels, they age them for another 6 months at least, and then we blend everything over there, bottle it in those, as you mentioned, the EU regulated 700 ml bottle, and then we ship it all over the world. So you've got some whiskey there that was aged in 3 different climates, 3 different areas, and I think that the ocean trip. I know that the ocean trip changes the whiskey, but we all believe that the ocean trip made it a whole heck of a lot better. And
And then
then,
that was my question.
yeah,
Um didn't you think, okay, do we want to come off, and I'm being very candid, do we want to come off
please.
as gimmicky, right? Because obviously we know there is a brand that does that already, gave it a name saying we put it on the ocean. And I think what I hear usually when I'm talking to people is it gimmicky? Does it really make a difference? As an educator, I said we all know environment affect barrels. That's why there's rick houses. That's why there is exchange of temperature. But I've never been on a boat for 6 days in my life to know if I feel different. So I cannot say if for sure putting a barrel on a boat for for a certain amount of days will affect the bourbon. So can you speak to
Right.
that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's actually 6 weeks from what I
6 weeks.
understand.
See,
Yeah,
don't longer
yeah,
time. So
yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. To be honest, we were over in England, and one of the guys who was leading a tasting of our bourbon and rye said he gave a nice analogy to English tea. We're sitting there in London, and he said, "Have you ever put a tea bag in a hot cup of water? It makes tea, but if you stir it up, it makes tea a whole heck of a lot faster." And I love the analogy with the UK connection with tea and how much they love it, but like more so it makes sense to me. I mean, the barrel instead of it just sitting, literally just sitting there for 6 years, it is literally interacting like crazy. Not to mention, you've got all these different temperature fluctuations. Um, and I don't know chemically. I'm not a scientist, but I do know that when you have that much interaction with the wood, there's got to be a different result after 6 weeks of doing that. And then
okay.
beyond that, my blender in England is convinced that our whiskey smooths out. He tastes it. He tastes every barrel upon entry into the UK, and then another again 6 months later after it's aged in England. He's convinced that it makes it smoother. There's an oxidation that happens over in England with the cooler climate that makes a big difference. So we just got
Okay.
lucky. Is it gimmicky? I'll let your fans decide. I
No,
mean,
and that's
it,
that's really where I'll say the customer will have to decide if
right,
that's the case. But so you make two decisions, and I want to know why. The decision to take the barrels from here, you are, you know, for lack of a better word, a good old Kentucky boy.
right.
Why would you even want to move these barrels to the UK? That's one. Two, you didn't take a master blender in America. You took a master blender from the UK. How does that fit into the story? Because we know this horse was born and bred in Kentucky, was and have the best story to be told about how he came to life in Kentucky with the shot of Kentucky bourbon. And now you are trying to honor this, but you move it to the UK and you blend it there and bottle it there. How does that fit into the story?
Should I tell the English part of the story?
Yes,
And
I would love
then
to. I would love to hear
I
that
think
part. Yes.
I think that makes sense because it will make sense to you. I think the answer to your question is very
Mm.
simply. Go ahead.
Did you put this whiskey in any competition yet?
Yes, it has won gold medals in at the International Spirits Competition. It just won a silver at the San Francisco World Champions. Are you drinking the rye or the bourbon right now, Jack?
Of course, the bourbon. I have to start with the
Okay.
original.
Yes, of course. So it just won another gold medal. It was named world's best bourbon by Forbes magazine. So it's a highly acclaimed whiskey. You're not. It's not a gimmick. Uh, I'm
No,
glad you. I'm
I
glad you
have
appreciate
no.
it.
I literally have to be honest. There is certain things when you drink it, right? When somebody say, "I want to give me a good Kentucky bourbon," there's three names that I will name, right? To say you almost cannot go wrong with this because of the proof, because of the, the structure of the bourbon on your palate, and obviously because of price. But
Can I guess one?
yes,
Is it like Weller or Blanton's maybe?
of absolutely not.
No. Okay.
No,
Let's see what you got. All right.
no. Like if somebody asked me, like I'm talking about somebody just say, "Give me a good Kentucky bourbon," I'll pour them Woodford,
Okay. Love it.
right? Yeah, I will say, have this. This is a representation of Kentucky bourbon, right? I'm never gonna go into anything hyped up in any way, shape, or form, but have that. That is what it is, right? And then if I move on, I'll be a little edgy and go, let me pour you some Evan Williams. Now you're a Kentucky boy, so you know, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe I'll be frisky enough and maybe give you some old folk.
Love it.
But there's
Love it.
there's a lot of new thing coming on. But this bourbon, 95, is perfect.
Wow. That's high
I know
praise.
I know it's weird. It is weird that that's the only word I thought of. Once it touched my palate immediately, I can drink this. I can literally just, this is my, let me have a pour over me. If somebody didn't tell me that it was never say die, I will have guessed a few distilleries that I know make solid, almost 95 proof bourbon all the time. Solid. I don't have to think about it. I'll grab it off the shelf every day. This is it.
Love
The
it. We've
nose
had
is, you're looking for those beautiful brown sugar caramel, a note on the nose, because that's Kentucky, with a little bit of that bacon spice, but in your case, more cinnamon. It's on the very bright coming through. Very, 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 already like give you a little bit of joy as it come through. On the palate, you get that nice sweet hit of what I call chewing almost into a dash of that brown sugar, some maraschino cherries, a little apple, and juiciness just hit the top of the palate, goes down easy. You don't get a little bit, a little bit of that Kentucky hug, and it's just the end. If you like a long lasting, finish, this is not it. But this definitely is just that perfect finish of, I call that 45-second perfect finish that warms you up, but you can go back for another sip. It draws you in right away for another sip. It's
I
blended to
love it.
perfection. It's blended to, that I cannot. I wish I can tell you, you were, if this is what 6 weeks on a sea does, the gimmick works. That's what I would say. The gimmick works. That's my personal opinion, but I would challenge each and every one of you to actually try it to see how you feel about it. Because personally, um, yeah, you get in my book, you definitely get an A minus.
I love it. Thanks. We've had some reviews because there's a lot of people that review whiskey out there and they've tried it all, right? And some people I think have given us a little bit less than a perfect review, or even like, average. We don't get offended. Where I mean, everybody's got a different opinion, but we're
No,
like,
it's,
obviously,
it's, a, it's a solid pour.
yeah.
I
So
think
that's what we keep hearing. We don't get.
yeah,
It's not going to knock
it is
anybody's socks off.
a solid pour. Like, I cannot. There's no way somebody pour me this. And even like second sip, third sip in, you get a little bit of that nice, almost, bitterness from a little licorice that you want at that back when you are trying some good Kentucky bourbon. And this for me is a solid 100% solid pour. No one, I will argue with anybody that look at me and say a 95 proof, this is not a solid pour. I'll argue with anybody because I truly believe solid pour. Maybe the price may throw people off, but I've always explained price when it comes to things that people put into their whiskey to happen. But we'll get to that when we talk about distribution and price. But for now,
Love it.
tell us about this UK side of this whiskey.
Yeah. So let's go back to that horse that was life was saved, right? And that's 1951. So he's a thoroughbred, with a good pedigree. And a couple years later, he's winning these races on the turf. So they send him over to England, where and for your non-Kentucky horse racing fans, a turf race is run on the grass as opposed to on the dirt like the Kentucky Derby. So the biggest turf racing circuit in the world is over in England and Europe. And so they send him over to compete with the best, and he wins a few races, and they enter him into the Epsom Derby, which is the English Classic. It's the biggest horse race in the world at the time. 250,000 people go to this event every year. And the favorite in the race, and obviously, and no American horse has won this race in 70 years. So no chance for a Never Say That, right? And he's 33-1 underdog. Queen Elizabeth shows up, newly inaugurated, in her 20s, in her box with Winston Churchill, no joke, at the same race, and they have the favorite in the race. So they're expecting to be victorious. And sure enough, Never Say Die, with a rookie jockey who's 18 years old named Lester Piggott, runs past all of them at the finish line in a huge upset at a 33-1 odds. Like immense upset. Some would say change the course of racing breeding to make America a thoroughbred breeding powerhouse that it has become since. I mean, this was like one of those match that was lit that started a bigger fire. You know what I mean? So if that's not, I mean, again, now I'm like, and by the way,
history changing moment there.
Right, exactly. The craziest part, Jack, if you're willing to let me finish the story and then we can talk more whiskey and such. Okay, so right before that race, there's a woman in Liverpool named Mona Best. Okay, and this is 1954. She has a son who's a drummer, bunch of friends who are musicians. They have nowhere to play their gigs, and she's always had her eye on this old Victorian house in downtown Liverpool, but didn't have nearly enough money to pay for it, and had big ideas and big dreams, but no cash. So she literally pawns all of her jewelry. She hears the name Never Say Die, and she is like, "That's me. I'm just going big on this one. I'm betting it all at 33-1 odds." Like what a crazy bet to make on a huge long shot, right? But she does it, and obviously she wins, and she goes back to Liverpool and she buys that old Victorian house, and over the next several years develops the Casbah Coffee Club in the basement. And right as it's about to open, she tells her son, Peter Best, "Hey, if you and your friends want to paint the walls, I'll pay you. And you can also be the first gig that happens there." And his friends were Paul McCartney, John Lennon, and George Harrison. And they were called the Quarrymen back then. And so anyone who's listening to this can look this up. The very first gig for the Beatles, or the Quarrymen back then, was the Casbah Coffee Club, which was funded wholly by Never Say Die's 33-1 upset victory in the 1954 Epsom Derby. So when Pat told me that, I was like, "Pat, this is the coolest story ever. We've got to pay full tribute to this." And Pat was even like, "Well, should we make whiskey in England, to maybe make it in a bourbon style over in England?" And we thought about it a little bit further, and we're like, "Hey, we have to pay tribute to England somehow, some way, and have that be our finishing spot. But we make the best whiskey in the world here in Kentucky, so why the heck wouldn't we do that? Ship the barrels over to England and then bottle it there." And magically, it was never thought of let's make a gimmick that would help sell whiskey. It was more like let's pay full tribute to this horse, tell the story the best we possibly can, and if people like the whiskey and it turns out great, then even better, right? So that's where we're at.
So to recap, I'm looking at this as a horse born in unfortunately circumstances, get raised and start winning. Underdog, start winning in Kentucky. They say, "You know what? You're doing great here. Let's put you into this big tournament in the UK." Queen Elizabeth is there. Winston Churchill is there. This lady that I've always wanted to have a cafe bet on this horse. 33-1, you said?
That's right.
33-1. That lady, Mona, which I had to Google her right now, Mona Best, has a son called Peter Best, which also was into music. And she wanted to pay her son and her friends to just paint and will offer them to do their first gig as young musicians at her cafe. And the first gig of this group now that we now know in history as the Beatles, right?
Yep.
Played their first gig. There is actually an interview for all of you guys who don't know this. There is actually an interview on YouTube that was a remake of the old interview that showed Mona and Peter talking about how the first time they got into the cafe. This is just fast. I love history, stories. This is just fascinating. So you wanted truly to pay homage because right now it's not even tribute, it's homage to Never Say Die as a horse from Kentucky in his grandiose way, being an underdog, bringing it back to where it all started to this place where he's this horse changed the history of racing, right? Horse racing, really, to include more American horses into those races, and giving us a place, and a place we're good at actually having amazing horses that can also race, but also opening the door to one of the biggest, right, bands, one of the biggest music group in the world, a chance to become what they are today.
Exactly. Unbelievable, right? I mean, the fact that most Americans don't know this story shocks me, and I didn't know it. It's like it needs to be a movie. I've heard that multiple
It
times.
should
I
it
mean, a lot
should
of
be a movie. It should be a
yeah,
movie.
it may very well be. There's a book that was written on it, and the movie rights, to my knowledge, are in motion a little bit. We hope it comes to fruition. But people in England know the story. In fact, whenever I'm over in England, it's kind of fun because people, it's totally different. When I say Never Say Die, they know the horse. They actually, very many of them know the name of the jockey who rode that horse. Because another crazy part of the story is that that jockey who was 18 years old, who I referenced, who was a rookie, who had never won that race or any big race for that matter, his name was
Jesus Christ.
Lester Piggott. If you Google Lester Piggott, you won't believe this. He ended up becoming the greatest jockey in English racing history. I think he won like 8 Epsom Derbies after that. It's but people in England know all this stuff. They know all about the Beatles, the Casbah Co.
Good old Lester. I can see. I googled him now. I can see his pictures.
Yeah, yeah. His very first Epsom Derby was on Never Say Die. You can look it up.
Oh my God. I see it now. Good. Oh my God. I this is really truly history right now. That I'm here, and I'm excited. I'm excited.
So that's why we thank you, Jack. Because I mean, the main point of this is like how fun to be able to tell this story over and over again, and get people in the world to get inspired by this underdog story of this horse that should have never lived. But better yet, like the woman having just the stomach to take a bet when all looks grim in her life, and to take a shot on something that seems ludicrous, and then to have it prevail into change music history. I mean, that's the bold inspiration that we all need, right? So like
that
that,
that is
if
that is
one,
what we need, more of these stories in the world, because
right,
I am I am so I that is such a good story. Like I cannot tell anybody, I would tell this story, but I will probably get emotional telling it, because for me, being an immigrant from a different country and understanding the history of an underdog, this story resonate a lot with me. It resonate a lot with me. I can't. I am. I. I. I regret not having you on my show way sooner, because I would take this whiskey with me everywhere and just tell the story, because you know rien ne se crée, rien ne se change, tout se transforme. Nothing is created, nothing is coincidence. Things just transform. This is truly history happened when a bunch of coincidences come together to transform how we see life.
that's
This,
right.
for ladies and gentlemen, was Lester. when I had to show his picture, and Lester grew. He literally aged like fine wine because this was Lester in his last days. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no, the man looks literally the same. Look literally the same.
yeah,
Uh,
it's unbelievable. Can you
it's
imagine
truly
taking a
truly
shot
truly
with a world class thoroughbred and putting him
yeah.
putting that little kid on your horse to try to win all the money and like all the fame and fortune. I mean, he was a rookie. It's nuts.
It's such an amazing story. I'm glad you're telling it. So then what happened? Now I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
Oh, I mean,
So this horse comes in, wins, change history, then goes. We have this lady that want all this money, buy this place, give a shot to her son and his friend to actually play in this band. We know what happened to the band, right?
that's right.
We
That's
know what
right. And
happened to
then
the band.
you know what happened to the drummer if you know history. I mean, it's not John, Paul, George, and Peter. It's John, Paul, George, and Ringo. He got Peter, her son, sadly gets kicked out of the band a couple years later, and there's a lot of theories on why that happened. And that's what's so tragic about it in a way. But I'm sure. But that being said, Peter Best he wrote the foreword for the in the book Never Say Die, that was written by Jamie Nicholson. It's an incredible read, especially if you like horse racing and horse breeding. He goes all into that, but he tells the whole story. And without Jamie researching this story, we would have never known it to the depth that we do. So, what happened? I guess music history was changed, obviously, right?
Correct.
And then it sort of like fizzled. Like there was not many people talked about Never Say Die or anything from there for 70 years, right? I mean, it was just part of history. And thankfully, Jamie uncovered this and he wrote the book called Never Say Die. And Pat read it, my partner, and learned a lot about it. And I've read it. And we've just all become enthralled with the story to the point where now we're like, let's write the next chapter. Let's get this
Yes.
brand. Let's make an incredible whiskey that can hopefully hold up to the story. So that's where we are. That's where we are now. I can tell you a little bit about how we made the whiskey, et cetera, if you like. But
No,
more so,
please go
or we
ahead.
can.
Go ahead. I want to hear it.
So then we were thinking, okay, do we make a distillery? Do we buy barrels? And we kind of figured, okay, I knew these two superstar up and coming distillers who were building a new distillery down in Danville. And this is back in 2015. I reach out to them and they're like, yeah, we bought this farm on the southwest side of Danville and we're going to, expand and make a much bigger distillery. And we're going to do contract production for other brands and we can do a custom mash bill for this story. And so thankfully, those two guys made an incredible recipe for us. We only
And they make one of the best whiskeys in Kentucky. There's have
That's
never
true.
been, and I can say this with conviction, that there have never been a whiskey that came where I will let you decide where they've contract distill for people. And there's two brands right now, and tasting your whiskey, I can say the same thing. There's two brands right now that are, I mean, shooting through the market, and it all started in Denville. You know, I have to give credit when credit is due. This is the only reason why I knew where the whiskey came from is because this is your only connection on LinkedIn. He's your only connection on LinkedIn. That's literally how I knew what the list guy was. If any of you here don't know who Dr. Pat Hines is, you should Google it. You should Google him. Um, that man deserve made a difference in so many distillers' life with how he approached yeast creation, fermentation, contract distilling, that he deserved all the credit that is due to anybody that make whiskey. So shout out to Dr. Pike for keep doing the Lord's work in the whiskey industry and changing, distillers' life and putting so many whiskey on a map by just creating something special when it comes to putting whiskey out there. So go ahead, bro.
Completely agree. And I was really lucky to know Pat and his partner Shane as well as I did. and catch them early enough that they were willing to take a shot on this. And when I told them the story, they were like, "Well, hell, we need to be partners in this." Like, and they don't do that. Like, they had their own brand, but they loved this brand so much that they both wanted to be involved and fully jump in with both feet. So they made a killer recipe for us. They use a sweet mash process that I think takes a lot of the bite and that Kentucky hug out of the whiskey, and it's just super smooth. And I asked Pat, why doesn't everybody do that? And he's like, because it's hard, Brian. We're
It is.
geniuses, and
It
they are.
is.
And so they use the sweet mash process, and like I said, ultra premium barrels, like the nicest ones you can get. Number 4 char from Independent State, and premium select, and we age it longer than a lot of new bourbons do. And man, it was hard to be patient because we not missed, but like we had to wait through the boom of bourbon like you wouldn't believe. I mean, we
Correct.
started making
Correct.
first barrels in 2017. So now here we are 7 years later, and we got to launch our product while bourbon market is still moving and
Still
people still
moving.
love it. And
Yeah.
it's a little bit has cooled on like the crazy growth that we've seen, but it was really hard to watch from the sidelines. But I knew damn well that we were going to come and hit everybody with something really unique and cool and a story that blew all the rest of them away
Dude,
once we
dude,
finally.
your story right now. Um, I, I, more people need to hear. This is a piece of UK, a piece of Americana, a piece of history that more people should. Hell, it should be like a whole podcast sticker behind this, so people can go back and listen to this because I, w- I, I don't want to tell a story about about all the great families in Kentucky anymore. And, I do like I do whiskeys from around the world. That's my class. My tasting is just really like I want to take this bottle to say, let me tell you, after you taste all this whiskey from around the world, how words, worlds collide together to create something so unique that your mind is, it's gonna blow. And this whiskey is it's I'll forever now call it let me tell you a story whiskey, right? There's no long this is no longer a conversational whiskey like I like to call my whiskey. This is no longer a tasting whiskey. This is let me tell you a story whiskey. Let me tell you a story I'm sure you won't believe. Every
Love it.
grandpa that want to tell a story to their new 21-year-old teenage man coming in to drink should say, sit down, let me tell you a story as you drink your first, you get to your first bourbon. This is usually hear this story first before you hear about the greats in Kentucky. This is amazing, Brian. This I need to stop talking. I
Let
can't
me
stop talking.
well, let me tell your crew, because you told me this 10 minutes before we started filming, but this blew my mind that Jack decided, for those who haven't listened to Jack or know him well enough, he decided to get into the bourbon tasting and being an influencer and tell stories. But what really blew me away was that he went over to Scotland. He came to Kentucky. He lives in Nebraska. And I hope I was not supposed to tell him that, but whatever.
No, it's all right. I do not care.
Secrets out.
I tell
But
everybody, me and Warren Buffett are just cousins, and we live in the same state. That's the only thing I brag about in Nebraska. I say, we may have a really shitty team. We may we may not. We may have a lot of corn, but we got two things that no one can take from us in Nebraska. We got Warren Buffett, and we can ship you your steak in the mail. So those are the two things we have in Nebraska
I
that
love
are,
it.
yeah. But
Well,
let's talk about the
Jack has been
as we
all over
get
the world to become an expert in this field,
yes.
which I really admire strongly. Like, to the point where if Jack says that our whiskey is perfect or a story to tell, then man, I am honored and flattered. So thank you so
I
much.
am going to tell this story forever. I am actually going to make sure I have a backup bottle as I tell this story anywhere I go now. I just came back from Florida where I did a really a VIP tasting for some high-end client that wanted me to tell, and every single one of them do the same thing. They say, "You tell so many good stories. It makes every whiskey I did not like sound taste better." And I said, "Then I've done my job because the truth is." whiskey tastes better. And I put this on I asked my group before. I say, does whiskey taste better when you hear the story? And everybody agrees. 95% of people say, yeah, I want to hear the story. Whiskey tastes better when you hear a good story. So
Hmm.
that is that is something that for me is important to tell people a story.
Can I tell
You
you
just
another story?
yes, yes,
While you
I
open up that,
because
well, I want to tell you a story about that.
yes.
So that's our rye whiskey,
Let me
and
let me show the folks if you don't if you can see it here because I'm in a different studio today. Let me show you. This is
yep,
the right whiskey.
and that's my signature on the label with my co-founder Martha Dalton, who is a brilliant political strategist over in London. So Martha and I have run this brand in tandem from two different continents for the past 7 years. Um, that bourbon was distilled in 2018, or whiskey, sorry, that rye whiskey. So the story with that is we were about to produce a bunch of barrels of bourbon, and Wilderness Trail, damn, I just said their name, well, whatever.
It's
Shane,
all right. It's all right.
Shane,
When
it's
you
all right.
when you say Pat, people know where he's from. So yeah,
Right.
it's okay.
Well, Shane tells us, "Hey, you sure you don't want to make some rye whiskey for this brand?" And I'm so glad he said that, and because I love rye whiskey, like it's my favorite type of whiskey, and I didn't even know Wilderness made one at the time. And so I was like, "Yeah, let's do that." And we made a few hundred barrels of rye, and man, every time we tasted it, we're like, "This is going to be maybe better than the bourbon. This is so special." And I, I, I don't know. I'm going to let you be the judge, Jack, but I will tell you that San Francisco, we entered both, and that one scored higher. That one got a 97 score with a double gold in the San Francisco World Championships. The word's kind of out that that's a darn good whiskey. I really hope you love it. It's my favorite whiskey maybe on the planet. I truly like. That's the one I grab out of my cabinet every time.
So because I know where your rye come from, there's something so interesting about this rye. It is floral, but not in a lavender type of floral, but more like anise clove, right? Anise clove. You get those spice note, but the floralness almost remind me of um, like hay, like
Hmm.
that damp hay. If you love outdoors, you know what I'm talking about. There's just this certain things that flowers and nature and hay together just put together, but some clove, spark like clove and anise is the spiciness that come through this rye. This rye is 105 proof.
If you notice, we did 95 proof for the bourbon, 105 for that.
Yeah,
Guess what number Never Said I wore in the big race?
five.
Yeah, number five.
Yeah.
So it's a tribute to the horse, but also because we knew we wanted our rye to really be punchy and hold up in a cocktail because we know that's going to be what most people use for an old fashioned or other type of bourbon or whiskey type of drinks. But the bourbon we think drinks incredibly well at the 95, so that's why we chose those two.
Hmm. 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 In my man Keith Lee's words, for sure you right on. For sure you right on. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What is that?
It's
I
just
don't
a
know.
very unique rye. I've
I,
never had anything like it.
I
It's
am
just
telling
really
you right now,
perfectly unique,
unique. Unique is the only way to describe this rye.
but not in a bad way, right? Like, I mean,
Mm-mm.
that's the goal was, and that's
Mm-mm.
why Shane and Pat are so damn brilliant. Like, the goal was make a drinkable, and they call it a Kentucky rye, okay? And it's not 95% rye like some of the ryes that are out there on the shelves. Which, if you love a rye, great. That's like super spicy. It's like real punchy and awesome. Like, I love a good night hot rye. This one's 56% rye, 33% corn.
Barely
So we'll
legal.
drink a little bit more bourbon-ish for a rye whiskey. And I'll tell you,
That's what I'm saying.
I can't
Barely
I can't
legal.
tell you how many people um, have told me I don't really love rye, but man, I like that rye. And I think that's pretty much unanimous amongst people who've tried that rye.
Holy crap. It is chewy. It stays on your tongue. It literally take a grip of your tongue and just hold on to it. Like not letting go. Like you have your tongue in a chokehold. Like you expect the spiciness to go, oh no, it's too spicy. No, no, no. It's chewy. It has body. The body on this rye is what makes it special. The the mouthfeel of this rye tells you literally about the body. You almost have that feeling when you have a little bit of something acidic in your mouth, where it makes you actually salivate over and over and over again. And then you finish with that nice tic tac toe of spice that you expect on a rye, but the body is chewy, it's juicy. It almost pops in your mouth, which is kind of weird, but it pops in your mouth. That's and woo,
Are you catching a little bit longer finishing that one, Jack?
oh yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
because
That tic tac toe. You almost, it's almost, it's almost taunting for you to go back to it. Like it's taunting you. Like I bet you can taste me again. That's what's happening right now. It's you both expression that you made right now. I will be honest, are long drinking expressions. They're not. I've had whiskeys. I've had enough whiskeys to know that there's, I'm gonna taste one and taste it one time, and I'm probably not gonna go back to it. And you know, I'm just gonna have it maybe once in a while. This is something that you may finish in less time than you need to, because you may actually not know when you're done with it. And let's be honest, the word of bourbon can become overwhelming and boring sometime. And thank God for producers like you that agree that you need something unique, from the yeast to the way you develop this whiskey. And I'm glad you did not source. That's one thing I want people to remember from this. This is not sourced. This is something that was created to tell a story, and he tells the story perfectly. It
thanks.
is
Yeah,
it is
every
unique.
barrel
It is
we've
unique,
ever,
just like that horse. It's very unique. It has substance and substance. It holds its own, and I can see why. I can see why. I'm glad I learned the story. That's one. The second, I'm really glad I opened this and tried it. Um,
thanks. I can't believe you didn't try it before the podcast.
I
I
did
love it
not.
that you.
I did not,
This is
because
great.
I have a rule when it comes to whiskey. I have two rules. One, if I'm not gonna talk to you, then I'm gonna try your whiskey, and you get to live the way I am. But I have what I have that imposter syndrome sometimes, because I had this whiskey over almost over a year ago, and I wanted to go on YouTube and make a review and tell. But after reading, when I opened the PR package, is literally still here. After opening the PR package, I stopped, read it, and I said, am I confused, or this is just a crazy story? So I said, wait. I went back and I emailed. I said, I want to talk to the person behind this brand. They're like, what do you mean? I said, I'm not going to review. I'm not going to post about it. I want to talk to the person behind this brand, because this story is ludicrous. I want to hear it. And they
Thanks.
said, okay, we don't get those requests, but okay. I said, no, I will wait as long as it takes. Just let me know. And 6 months later, we are talking now, because I truly kept this whiskey around through moving, even kept it around. I say, I want to talk to the person behind this. And I am so glad I got to hear the story directly from you. You have now an advocate that can go around and tell the story the way it is, because
Thank you.
this is the coolest thing. And to say that this whiskey is not sourced give you truly a badge of honor. That is something you should stand on 10 toes down because you literally put in work to have a whiskey that tells a true story, and there's nothing to be said about. No one can take that away from you. Now
That's
let's
right.
talk about where can people get this whiskey. I want to
Yeah,
know.
I noticed Smitty Smith, I think, was one of the guys
Yeah, he
who
yeah
was
he said
watching
he
this.
said yeah
He,
he said I want to know where I can get
yeah,
this
yeah,
whiskey
I
because
gotta
if
tell
we're
people
talking
because
about it,
yeah, if you're in Illinois, California, Texas, Kentucky, and there's a few other states out west like Arizona, Colorado, they're just coming online where you can find it anywhere in Kentucky. I mean, almost most stores in Kentucky, and we're just getting into Illinois and Texas. Um, but thankfully, Sealbox, if any of your best listeners know about Sealbox, they're a premium bourbon.
I literally put in a comment now. I went in and already told people.
Yeah,
I put the
that's. I
link
mean,
in.
we make sure that Sealbox and our distributor in Kentucky have it always, because we want everybody in our home city to be able to find Never Say Die. And if anyone comes to Kentucky and does the Kentucky Bourbon Trail and really immerse themselves into Kentucky, everything, horses, everything, it's really fun for them to be able to take a bottle and Never Say Die home with them. But Sealbox thankfully ships to almost every state, and they have both our rye and our bourbon, and the rye is only available in Kentucky right now, maybe in Illinois. So if you want to try that chewy rye with that incredible minty finish that Jack tried, that's the spot, and I can get it to you in the mail in most states.
I'm,
So
I'm
good for
telling you,
them.
right now, even the bourbon is a good buy.
Yeah, try it.
Right now, Sealbacks, it come to 69.95. Here's what I will tell you: easy breezy, beautiful. Let's be clear. This is not just a bourbon because I know you guys, the trolls are gonna come and say, "How in the hell you actually think a 95 proof bourbon you want is sold at $69?" Relax, relax. I'm not gonna let Brian sell this to you. I'm gonna tell you, Brian. Would you say that this small batch is truly a one of a kind?
Let me just tell you, I can't price it lower because we ship it across the ocean twice. We're in a premium bottle, premium barrels, premium everything. Like, we're not making that much money at that price. And I'll be perfectly honest, like, it's going to take thousands of case sales before we're making a lot of money with this brand. So that's not the agenda. Um, is it a premium? It's the story, and having that bottle on the shelf and being able to share it with the friends, even if you only buy it once, is worth the investment, no doubt about it. And
Yes, yes,
and
it
if
is.
you love it, like some of my really good friends do, and they send me a picture of an empty bottle. It seems like every couple of weeks. Like, I mean, I have multiple friends that send me a picture of their empty bottle. They're like, "What is wrong with me? This stuff drinks too damn easy." And if you
Correct,
keep
and
buying
that
it,
that was my
that's
point.
great.
That's what I told you. I said I don't like this. I mean, I don't like it in a good way
Scary.
because it's like it's scary easy to drink. It's very easy to drink, and I don't care who you are. This is very, very much so easy to drink. It's the bourbon specifically, regardless of the weather. Um, and clearly, this rye is gonna go into a highball for me because I
Yeah,
want. I You working highball, working in Negroni, you working in Manhattan, especially of the way this one was made. But I want to tell you right now, you there's a lot of story you can tell about a lot of whiskeys, but rarely you get to tell a story that the person go bullshit, and you're like, let me Google it. Let me Google. Let me show you. I promise you, I'll Google it, and you will know. So there you have it. Right now, 69.95 is what they're selling it on sellbacks. I'll tell you what, is a piece of history. If you're into horses, if you're into horses and you don't have this bottle, I feel sorry for you because I can't trust you now to tell me about horses if you don't have this bottle because you should know about this history. You should tell this history. And if you, yeah, like I say, if you're into horses, you should totally own this both bottles. That's what you should own. So that's one. Two,
thanks.
if you want to tell a cool ass story, this is the bottle. But Pour the whiskey first and let them go, what's that? And then you go, let me tell you a story. That's gonna be my gimmick now. I'm gonna say, let me pour you a bourbon. They go, oh, what's that? Let me tell you a story. That's what it's gonna be. So this is the let me tell you a story bourbon and rye. And if you have the possibility to do so, what's the name of it? The name of it is Never Say Die.
How
Somebody,
can you
one of
forget
us,
that?
and never say that. That is. This is the link for you to be able to have it if you want to. But distribution wise, you're saying right now you are in a few states around Kentucky for sure, and Sailbacks actually ship everywhere. If you guys know about Sailback, they don't need an introduction. You can literally just sort. But I think truly people may not know what's happening with this bottle, but you should totally I, I need to send some email. You should go on more places. This story needs to be told over and over and over because it's the coolest story ever. So
Love it.
here's my question for you: what do you where do you want to see Never Say Die? What is your plan for the future? What should people expect as they become fan of Never Say Die? Remember, Never Say Die Bourbon on Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you follow them uh to
Yeah,
keep.
especially Instagram. We pump out a bunch of really good
Oh yeah.
content on there. And we need to get better about Facebook and X. But where's the brand going? I really hope within the next, and it's for sale. We have a barrel strength for sale over in England and have for 2 years now.
Are you kidding me?
So no, and so it's sort of like Blanton's Gold in a way, where if you really want to have something unique, our blender over there, he tastes every every barrel that comes over, and then he puts five aside out of every 87 that we send. That's how many fit in the shipping container. And he's like, those five are special. Let's make those single barrels, and they're sold in England only. There's a cheat you can buy off of an
So
English
so in
retailer and get a.
September I'm going to London.
You should go get a barrel strength at the Whiskey Exchange in London, or I mean, there's a lot of
And
retailers in
and I'll
London
be
that have it.
working I'll be working with Whiskey Exchange when I go there. So I'm sending an
Perfect.
email now.
Yeah, they'll have it. And get barrel number 8. It's incredible. I just bought one myself and had it shipped to Kentucky. But so where's the brand going to go? Maybe we'll launch our barrel proof over in America at some point, but we're kind of holding back on that because we really like the fact that people have to go to England to get it. And we want this to be a really special thing over in England. Um, we want to get it into every state in America, obviously, so that way anyone who wants to tell our story can tell it over a bottle without having to wait for it to come in the mail.
And I'm
That's
literally looking as I'm talking to you right now. I'm looking it
Yeah,
up right now. It's
yeah,
it's 80 pound is the barrel strength,
right. And it's
and
not cheap to ship it, so you almost need to get a couple bottles and like get a
correct,
friend to do
correct.
it with you.
For
That's what
all
I
of you
always think.
guys in the UK, you're welcome. I'm about to tell. I can only imagine what this whiskey tastes like at cask strength.
It's
So
it's special. It is.
for people in Europe, there you go. For people in Europe, I'm gonna put the link to Whiskey Exchange. Make sure you actually I'm putting it for you guys. If you are in Europe, just make sure you actually grab it. I'm putting it here for the people in Europe. Somebody was here on here from Germany. So
Nice.
there you go.
Oh, we
People from
actually we, Never Say Dies for sale in Germany. You can find our rye there for sure. Um, and I don't want to only tout the Whiskey Exchange. We're in a bunch of retailers, Masters of Malt.
okay. Yeah.
There's the Whiskey World is another big one, and Selfridges, which is a somewhat of a retail shopping outlet in England, a very high end one that they listed our bourbon, which they don't do that very often. So we're
And
we're
this
in
yeah, this
we're easy
one
to find.
this one here is barrel four, and it's
Yeah,
$226, 226 bottles, and it comes at 61.5. I'm telling you now, I can only imagine what this bourbon tastes like. And that's the reason why you didn't get an A+ from me. You got an A because the tagline here, as you can see in the corner, is the truth is barrel proof. And I love to try whiskey at barrel proof. So I'm now curious. I'm on a mission. I'm literally when we finish this interview, I'm going to Siri and telling Siri to make sure that she remind me on September 7th or 8th that I need to grab a bottle of Never Say Die. This is incredible, truly
Love it.
incredible.
Love it. Yeah.
But what can beside you know beside just seeing it all around, do you think you want to more focus on increasing distribution? Is that
I mean, it's just like getting the story out is the best thing. And then, like, someday, no doubt, we want to have a fan experience, maybe in both countries. We're not sure. We haven't planned any of that out right now. It's just kind of like tread water financially, get the story out as many people as we can, make a whole lot more whiskey that, like, in 7 years, we'll have enough to fulfill demand, and then see where the brand goes. None of us are really itching to sell the brand under any circumstances. We have a great time. It's the same 7 people that started the brand. It's me, my founder Pat, who owned the farm that the horse was born on, Dr. Pat and Shane, and then three incredible partners over in London, David Weil, Fran O'Leary, and Martha Dalton. And so we've got 3 in England, 4 in America, and we kept it the same way. So we're just going to see where the thing goes. It's we're having a blast with it, and it's so awesome that people like you recognize it, hear the story, and they're like, "This needs to be told." Because I don't have a platform where people log in and pay attention to me, but you do. So thank you very much,
no,
Jack.
it's truly a pleasure to have you here. It's an honor for you to actually jump on and have this conversation here. For all of you watching, again, do me a favor right now for people on Instagram. Never Say Die. Make sure you give them a follow. And for all of you on Facebook, and LinkedIn, and for all of you guys on the professional side of LinkedIn, if you think that Never Say Die need to be in your store, need to be in your retail, bother him, bother Brian. Say,
Yeah.
hey, we need this brand in our retail, especially for you guys that are more boutique and want to make sure that you have something special in your tasting room. This is the man to talk to make sure that you have it there. Brian, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for jumping on. For all of you guys that are commenting, thank you so much for being here on Instagram and everywhere else. I'm gonna give y'all a couple minutes. Do you guys have any question that you think I did not ask, or Brian yourself, as people ask questions that I did not ask here? Is there anything that you want your audience to know? The future Never Say Die owners to know that I did not ask on this interview.
Nah, you hit it all. I'd love to hear if anyone has any questions. I'm happy to
That
report
is
or
that is all that's
give
all
them my
that's all
thoughts.
that's yeah, we would love to. If you have any question, we'd love to hear it. This is a new brand. Obviously, you haven't had a chance, but I challenge you to pick up a bottle and try it and comment and say something, because a lot of brands are coming on every day, but not every brand have such awesome story that were not make up from their grandpa, finding a yeast strain somewhere, or Jesus came down and gave him a certain message and whatnot. That this story is as real as it can. The names, the brands, the people is as real as you can be. Okay, doesn't look like anybody have any question. We covered it all. So, Brian, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being here on the Truth is Barrel Proof. It was a pleasure. Looks like we had over 75 to 90 people that went through this live and checked you out for a minute. So that's a good thing. Remember, the hood now is your place, right? This channel is now
Thank you.
your place. If there's something new, if there's something different, something amazing that is happening in the brand, this is your home now. You're part of my hood now. You can come here anytime and tell the folks again exciting things that happen. I wish you amazing success on your journey. I'm going out there and telling the story. I'm gonna tell this story as much as I can, to everyone that's willing to listen. I think I may actually just park, sometime this weekend to the, what do you call it? There's this horse club here. Equat something. My immigrant Tourette's is kicking in. Um, Place and tell all the dads there, if you bring in your kids here to actually gallop on these horses, you need to own this. This is important, right? So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you being here. Hope that we see more things come out of your brand. But we want everybody to grab a bottle. And if anybody have any question that you want me to ask them later, or if you're watching the recast, ask those questions. I can contact him directly. He'll be more than happy to answer those for you. And if you're here, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you being here and supporting the channel. And we'll see you next time. Cheers, everyone.